Growing up as a kid, I never realized how crucial video game music is to the game itself. Whenever I got a new game, I would just play through it, rush to eat up all the new content the game had to offer, maybe give it a second playthrough if the game was good enough, and move on to the next one. I never really slowed down to enjoy everything the game had to offer until much later. It wasn't until I had to do a podcast for one of my music courses in school that I realized just how important video game music is to its game. You can have a good game, but without a good soundtrack behind it, in my opinion, it always feels like it's missing something. If the game's content, like the story, the gameplay, and all those other things can be considered the heart of the game, then a soundtrack should be considered a game's soul. Since I realized this, I've been listening to game soundtracks a lot more and finding really good music in them, and today I want to share my personal top 5 that I've listened to so far. And before we get started, I just want to say that these are my personal opinions and top 5. And the great thing about opinions is you don't have to agree with me. So if yours are different, let me know down in the comments. And with that being said, let's get into it. These are 5 video game tracks that you need to listen to. Coming in at number 5 is the main theme from an action RPG called Indivisible. Now, a little background on the game for those of you who haven't heard of it. Indivisible is an action RPG slash platformer that released on the PS4 and Xbox One and PC in 2019 and on the Switch earlier this year. Without spoiling too much, it's about a girl named Ajna who has to travel with her friends to save the world from a force of evil who wants to destroy it. I saw it while I was just passing through a live stream and decided to pick it up whenever it went on sale, because while I'm not particularly a person who goes into the indie game scene, it looked interesting and I was actually surprised at how fun it was. What surprised me even more was how much heart the music had. And what I mean by that is, while I don't see it showing up at the Game Awards anytime soon, the music is very strong and does a very good job at pulling the listener in from the beginning of the track, keeping their attention, and ending it well. The combination of the vocals and the music that are present yet don't overtake the instrumental aspect of the music is great, and I love when pieces do that in other games as well, like in Nier Automata. I started up the game not expecting too much and actually ended up dancing in my seat a little bit by the time the music had stopped and it was time to play. The music really puts you into the narrative of the game, and that narrative is going on an adventure that's fun and action-packed, which is portrayed by the faster tempos and percussion, but is also very meaningful and reflective, which is what I feel the vocals portray. The music is beautiful in its own special way, which I can say is even a characteristic that it shares with the game itself. It possesses a charm that's present throughout the story and its characters, and it was genuinely surprising and refreshing to hear that from a soundtrack from a studio that essentially had a lot less to work with than other games. Indivisible only had a $2.2 million budget and a studio of 18 people. On a side note, when the music switches from a minor mode to a major mode in the opening animation, which has similar music, was one of the highlights of the opening track for me as well. A strong start coupled with beautiful animated opening by Studio Trigger puts the main theme of Indivisible at number 5 on this list. Coming in at number 4 is the town theme for Accumula Town in Pokemon Black and White for the Nintendo DS. The reason I like this song has a lot to do with the song itself, but also something to do with the game, because there are actually 4 different versions of this town theme in one game. Now, this town was one of the first towns you go to in Pokemon Black and White, and in every Pokemon game I played, I make it a point to go to every home and talk to everyone in the early game to see what items they can give me, what Pokemon they can trade me, and other things like that. Looking back on it, the initial theme really isn't anything too special. But, as I was exploring, I went into a house with 2 people, one sitting at a piano and one sitting at a drum set. And I talked to them to see if they had any items to give me, but instead, they did something else. I talked to the piano girl and she talked about playing the piano and asked if she could play me her favorite tune, and I said, sure, whatever. But then the town music started changing and added a counter melody, and then I realized that asking her to play the piano actually changed the town's tune. Then I talked to the boy sitting at the drums to see if he did the same thing, and sure enough he did by adding more to the town theme. Of course, then I tried it again after restarting the DS to listen to the town's theme with just one or the other, and it still sounded pretty good. And why I like this so much is that in a new Pokemon game where the region is new and fresh, you should definitely explore, and usually the game rewards that with items or trades or something of that nature. But this was one of the first times where the game rewards exploration in this way. It's already so satisfying to explore the new region as it is and check every corner for new things, and this to me was the best thing I could have received because this time it rewarded you not with items, but with a new experience that, as far as I know, had yet to be seen in a Pokemon game. And the way the piano and drums interact with the theme just makes it that much better because it adds a nice flair and takes it from a somewhat forgettable theme in my opinion to one of the most memorable. Like I said before, the music itself is fine, but part of the reason I enjoy this theme is because the only way the full theme can be heard without you already knowing about it is to take your time and explore the game, which is one of the main points of picking up a Pokemon game in the first place. It was a great introduction to a new region and deserving of the number 4 spot on this list. Coming in at number 3 is Xion's theme from Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. Oh my god, the title. It's by far the saddest track on this list. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I actually teared up a little bit while I was listening to it and writing the script, so it was a little tough, but I pushed through it. Once upon a time, one of my friends had me listen to some tracks from a game and told me to guess what they were about, and only told me where they were from and what they were about after I listened to about 5 of them and had commentary on them. I recently did the same test on my sister with this song for fun, and she said it was a song that had a lot to do with decisions and not knowing what to choose. Which actually was really accurate for someone who's never picked up a Kingdom Hearts game in their life. And to me, that's what makes Xion's theme so special to me. It's a bittersweet theme that, even if you don't know the narrative behind, has a melancholy mood to it and tugs at your heartstrings by being representative of the difficult choices one has to make in life. A choice between acting for the greater good while losing everything, or a selfish choice that allows you to keep everything you're close to while the people who need you suffer. It's a fairly simple theme in its orchestration and execution, but also complex in the emotion it conveys. It's neither happy nor sad, but somewhere in between. And when you actually get into the narrative of this character, it captures her story really well. Without going too in depth, Xion is a character who was never supposed to exist, yet somehow still exists between light and darkness. In a certain part of the theme, you can hear the melody play and then hear an echo behind it, almost as if there's an indecisiveness between the choice Xion has to make for everyone's good and the selfish choice that allows only her to be happy. Or at least, that's how I've interpreted it. This theme can almost be seen as a voiceless lamentation of sorts, almost as if the song itself is grieving over the impossible choice that it has to make. When the oboe comes in playing this passage, it's almost as if Xion is grieving over the decision she has to make, and right after that, Kairi, the girl who gave Xion her form, and don't worry about that, that's another video in itself, interrupts her with her theme, reminding Xion what it is that she has to do for everyone's sake. Also, the fact that another character's theme is actually a part of this is really cool because it shows that even Xion's theme can't exist without the aid of another, showing that she can never really become her own person. The first time I heard this theme, I actually got chills because of how it feels so full of emotion and yet empty at the same time. When you don't know what you're feeling, this is the song you put on. There are definitely mixed emotions about this character in the Kingdom Hearts community, but in my opinion, Xion is one of my favorite because of this theme and how well it captures her and her narrative as a character, which earns it the number 3 spot on this list.
It's showtime!
Coming in at number 2 on this list is the battle theme for the original Persona 5, Last Surprise. This is one of the few songs I can listen to, and have listened to, hundreds of times and still enjoy every aspect of it and start grooving in my seat every single time. Originally I had this and Takeover, which is the battle theme for Persona 5 Royal, tied, but after thinking about it I had this one take the number 2 spot. And the reason is because I just prefer this sound. The way the strings come in with this force and presence and yet at the same time exude a certain grace. And when the lyrics come in, everything calms down. Almost like the song declares that it's entered the room and commands the attention of everyone with a captivating speech on why they're better than you. Then the lyrics themselves also have a certain way about them, like they're looking down on whoever dares to cross the Phantom Thieves. They basically say that, we're gonna take you down and you're not gonna understand how, so here, let me spell it out for you real quick. It takes an intellectual stance over their enemies and makes the song even more condescending. And then during the bridge, it goes even further to belittle their enemies by asking if you're really sure you can take them down. And the part where it gets really silent and the music cuts out right before the chorus is just great. and the bass line throughout the whole song is just grooving the whole time, and while I overlooked it the first few times I listened to it, noticing it makes the song even more enjoyable, which frankly, I didn't think was possible. And also, the reason I took this over Takeover and why I like this more in general is just because of how it prioritizes subtlety over Takeover. If you look at the lyrics for Takeover, it's almost like it's declaring war on the enemies of the Phantom Thieves, basically saying, hey, you mess with us, we're gonna take you down. However, Last Surprise is more discreet than that. It basically sends the same message as Takeover, but has a more dignified aspect to it associated with it, that to me represents the Phantom Thieves better. They're thieves that come in, they steal what they want, and they leave without a trace. Last Surprise has more elegance and grace. Like, they're gonna come in, they're gonna take what they want, and
You never see it coming. You see that my mind is too fast for eyes. You're coming, but the time it hit you, you're not surprised. I'm coming.
And now, before we hit number 1, I'm gonna hit you with a few honorable mentions that almost made this list but didn't quite make it.
Lord, but the battle goes on, shadows all mass destruction.
Oh yeah, dun 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 dun, baby baby, dun 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 dun. Times of love overshadows my dreams. Baby, don't worry 'cause you ain't on it. Gonna be a show to remember. Takeover, it's time to put you down. Makeover, nothing's gonna take away my life was
Nah, for real. Here's my number 1 track that you need to listen to. Number 1 on this list is Dearly Beloved from Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, you remember when I said in the beginning of the video that I had to make a podcast for one of my music courses on a piece? Yeah, I did it on this one. I learned a lot about this piece while researching facts that relate to classical music on this song, and while I was doing that, I continued to fall in love with the piece even more than I already had. The piece starts off and it's so different from any of the other Dearly Beloved that came before it. It's almost unrecognizable as Dearly Beloved, yet somehow still manages to capture your attention. And in my opinion, it's by far the best. After the 5-year-long development process that I admittedly only came in around the tail end of, and this being the conclusion of a saga, Yoko Shimomura on the largest of stages did not disappoint in making a song that fit the occasion. The piece, while being so young, has a lot of care embedded in it, and it shows. The way I felt when I booted up this game and just sat in the menu while taking it in that Kingdom Hearts 3, the conclusion of almost a 20-year saga, is finally ending, is a feeling that I don't see being recreated anytime soon. I remember sitting on my couch and just listening to this for about 15 minutes before I even touched the actual game because it was just that good. Even though it's only been out for a year, this song has aged like a fine wine and I can see myself coming back to it to listen to it for a long time. And after researching it and learning that it was actually made to be similar to Franz Liszt's 12 Transcendental Etudes, I ended up loving it even more because now I know how much delicate work and research it took into crafting this piece. Other people tend to gravitate more towards other dearly beloveds from other Kingdom Hearts games, and that's totally fine. But all I can say for this one is that while I may listen to other soundtracks and find new music, I don't see anything topping this for a long time, if ever. And aside from what actually went into making it, it also has a level of simplicity, and that's what gets to me as well. While it's born out of a rich history of classical music tradition, it's not trying to do too much in a short amount of time. It's not trying to convey a message or tell a story, it's just a great piece of music that in 2.5 minutes holds the world within it, which earns it the #1 spot on this list. Thanks so much for coming, it was so much fun making this video and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with a friend. And if you have a different list, let me know down in the comments. And make sure y'all have a fantastic day.